We all talk about how we want more people in the trade, and how do we keep continuing passing that historical knowledge and making it easier for people to function well. What's up, guys? Ian Sandusky from Lakewood Machine and Tool back here again for Practical Machinists. And on this episode of Machine Shop Talk, we're going to be getting into one of the coolest stories I've ever heard about that transference of knowledge and how, with the right systems, we can get people up to speed very, very quickly at running a machine shop business. But before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications below to make sure you never miss a video. Let's get into it. We talk a lot in this trade about how do we transfer the historical knowledge, that body of knowledge on how to price jobs, how to set up jobs, how to program. How do we pass as much of that knowledge along as quickly as possible to the next generation of machinists to keep manufacturing in the West going? And one of the things that's very difficult to transfer is how to price jobs, how to quote jobs, how to, schedule those jobs. And we got to talk to Ashley from Mills Machine Works, who has one of the most perfect test cases, examples of how with the right systems, this can work really, really well. So I'd like to introduce Ashley Parent from Mills Machine Works. Let's go talk to her and hear her story.
Half that battle is developing a quoting process and having that historical data to play a key role. Not only are we quoting faster, we're quoting more accurately. Since onboarding Paperless Parts, our sales have increased 22% in only 4 months. It was painless and it was super efficient. Mills Machine Works is a small family-owned job shop in Lawrence, Massachusetts. My parents started the company in 1995, and for a long time, my dad was the heart and soul. In 2022, he got sick and I stepped in to run the business when he passed away. It was like one of the hardest times of my life, but I was determined to keep his legacy going. We also specialize in prototype to short run production, reverse engineering, and high precision machining, especially for the aerospace and defense fields. We worked on parts for F-18s, F-22s, Black Hawk helicopters. We even have some legacy support for the Patriot missile system. When my dad got sick, he kind of just abruptly stepped away from the company. He had been doing all of the quoting himself on paper. I remember telling him, you have to teach me how to quote. But he would always laugh and say, you're on a need to know basis and you don't need to know right now. I kind of figured out that if I started digging, I was going to discover his deep, dark secret of just guesstimating everything. We were getting no information about how he quoted, where he pulled numbers from, how he even came up with what he was doing. It was just insane. I was pretty much wearing every hat in the building at some point throughout my day. And by 2023, it became very clear that quoting was our biggest bottleneck. And if I didn't figure out a way to change that, we were going to go under.
Sounds like you went straight out of the frying pan and into the fire in every way possible.
I first needed to at least be able to talk the language to get that confidence, even the bare minimum. When I took over, I had to create a temporary spreadsheet just to keep track of anything, my labor hours, my material prices, outside processing. I even had a column for margin because that didn't exist, but it's got me someplace. It laid it out so that I could find my footing at the very least. But I had a huge problem. I didn't know how to read prints. That wasn't my job for the longest time. I had to constantly go out to the shop floor and pull my brother and sister off the machines to say, oh, how long is this going to take you? And they're like, okay, here we go again. They taught me how to read prints, the red flags to look out for on a drawing, tight tolerances, oddball tapped holes, anything that becomes a problem, basically. And I just became a sponge for information. I was kind of doing two things at once. I was learning how to machine while also trying to learn about the new technologies that were coming out. So I was kind of double dipping and just trying to sort through what's relevant today, what can I do to move us forward. I remember late nights, early mornings, practical machinist on in my car to and from work, just absorbing everything I could because I didn't want to rely on my brother and my sister for every single quote that I was putting out. Every time I pulled them away from their machines to help me, we would fall behind on scheduled jobs, and that just wasn't sustainable. I transferred our regular handwritten spreadsheet into Monday.com and started using Monday to build out kind of like a database where I could quickly pull information. But even then, if I only got sent a step file, I couldn't view what they were looking for. I needed a drawing. I didn't have Mastercam or SolidWorks on my computer. I run off a laptop. Like, that's not going to help me. But even after all of that effort, I still lacked the confidence to know if I was quoting correctly. I still felt very green. I felt like we were still too slow at quoting. And really, if you're not first, you're last in this industry because they want to award. It's not always about price. Sometimes they need the fastest quote so they can get the PO on your desk. And every quote just felt like a gamble because I could not verify that I was doing it correctly.
Definitely. Completely understand where you're coming from. But when you were looking for something, because obviously, you've said you were looking for technology to help you do your job better. What were the key things you were looking at that would help you know that it was actually going to work and then was working for you?
I needed a software that was going to streamline my quoting process. I was taking probably on average 3 to 5 days to turn around a quote, which we all know is far too long. I needed to get that under 48 hours for complex jobs and under 6 hours for simple jobs. I needed to create consistency so that I wasn't the only one that could quote as we grew. I also needed not just faster, I need something that could grow with us. I needed something that was going to give me visibility into what we were winning and what we were losing. And I needed to build a repeatable process to train others on. And if I can't do it, I can't expect somebody else to be able to do it. It's hard enough to find machinists. I don't want to take them away from the machines to have them quoting. I want other people to be able to learn how to do that. But here's the thing with Paperless Parts. I had known about them since 2019. They had come to my shop. I tried to get my dad on board back then, but he wasn't ready for that kind of change. He didn't want to spend the money. He's like, we don't quote enough. I'm like, that's the problem. But if we had signed on back then, when he did pass away, I would have had easily accessible historical data. And that was my biggest selling point is my son is 7. He says he's taking over this company someday. And I want to be able to deliver him a cookie cutter company that he can just plug in and go. And half that battle is developing a quoting process and having that historical data to play a key role. So when I finally made the decision to bring Paperless Parts in, it wasn't always just about speeding up my quoting process. It was putting the foundation in place that we should have had all along.
As someone who's done it, what's the big difference at your shop today?
It's been night and day. We haven't had it nearly as long as some other people, but I've already seen such huge differences in so many different things. Not only are we quoting faster, we're quoting more accurately and with a lot more confidence. They have built-in pricing logic, which, I don't heavily rely on that, but especially when I'm getting a new part, it gives me a place to start. I based off of my knowledge now, I can kind of tell when we can run something faster or something's going to take longer. Then it's not a foolproof method at all. But the visual part analysis, the templated workflows, it has made it so easy for me to stay consistent. And since onboarding Paperless Parts, our sales have increased 22%.
Wow.
In only 4 months.
Well, I guess it would be a combination of turnaround time, because as you said, they want quick quotes, but also likely you're more competitive on pricing because you're consistent.
I could do a whole thing on this. There's just so much that it draws my attention to just in the part analysis. It will give me red flag warnings if there's something that's like not even machinable. I wouldn't have known that. So when I see those red flag warnings, I take them. Those are what my brother sees. That's when I get him involved. Like, hey, is this an actual red flag, or can you work around that? Do I need to go back to the engineer and let them know, like, hey, this part isn't machinable the way it is? It's just changed so much transparency just between my customers and like our shop, that they value what I'm bringing to the table when I do find those red flags. And I would not have been able to find them prior to paperless.
And even as someone like I've been involved in quoting for probably almost 10 years, you still miss stuff, even with experience. Like I can't tell you how many jobs in the last even 2 years where we've quoted them, we got them maybe a little too fast. And you kind of wonder why. Oh, because you missed you thought it was a 1 thou tolerance, it's a 1 micron tolerance, or, you miss an undercut somewhere where you go, how are you even going to do that? And then you spend all this time and money figuring it out. It sounds like literally having a buddy in the shop with you that you can go, hey, can you take a look at this real quick? Saves you the trip out to the floor.
Yep.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
But obviously when it comes to software, there is an onboarding process. There is a shift in the way you do work. How was that onboarding process? And did you find your shop, had good buy-in, or did you find that, there was a bit of resistance there?
It was a kind of a mixed bag for the buy-in. I'm not the only one that works on quotes. I have somebody who assists me with finding the material and stuff like that. So on my side, I call it my side of the wall. We had really good, easy buy-in. But on the other side of the wall, on the shop floor, there was a lot of hesitation about, well, how much are we going to be removed? How much time are we really going to save? Is it going to be accurate? Are you still going to need me for every little thing? There was like some hesitation, just not being sure that this was the right move. Their hesitation was just making sure that the analysis was gonna be efficient. Essentially, they were worried, like, well, is it going to work the way they say it's going to work? And that was really the big question. But once we had buy-in from the shop floor, and I think I did it in like 4 or 5 weeks, I needed the system I've been running as fast as physically possible because I just couldn't keep circling the drain anymore. I couldn't keep chasing my tail with quoting. I needed to buy my time back. They made it so easy. The onboarding process, I looked forward to it. I looked forward to meeting with my team every day. Everyone I talked to was just so kind and so friendly. It was painless and it was super efficient. That was my experience.
And I got to backtrack here for a minute here because you brought up a really good point that I hadn't really thought of. When we're talking about time in a machine shop and we're talking about automating things, what are we usually talking about? Putting a robot on the floor, putting, AI programming software in, things that buy your staff their time back. So instead of doing dumb work, pushing a button, you can free them up for better work, smarter work, to really take advantage of their skills. I think you pointed out a very interesting thing here where that's essentially what Paperless Parts has done for your shop. You bought yourself back time via automation to free you up to do either A, the other work you need to do, or B, the work that you don't have time to do, like business development, like going and chasing new customers. It sounds like that was essentially what this did for you.
Yes.
Now, of course, no software tends to have everything you want in it. If you had to say there was one thing that you could add to Paperless Parts, what would it be? What's your wish list? Ask the genie question.
I think what I want is so simple that I am going to ask for it eventually. I quote large packages of parts. I'm sure that's pretty common across the board. When I'm quoting these large packages of parts, each line has its own material that has to get plugged in. I would just love to be able to hit an export button and have a PDF generated material list just so that I can go outside of Paperless Parts for a quote. But when I'm working with defense contracts, I need a very specific type of material, and it would just be so much easier to export that list and send it off in an email.
I have a feeling that what you're asking for can probably happen. But of course, you guys are busy. I don't want to take up too much of your time. Where can people find out more about Mills Machine Works and what you guys do?
You can visit us on our website at millsmachineworks.com. We are also pretty into our socials. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and I'm very busy on LinkedIn. Everything's at Mills Machine Works. I'm Ashley Parrott. That's where you'll find me on LinkedIn.
So there you have it, guys. I hope that was as engaging and interesting for you as it was for me. Ashley obviously overcame a lot to get her business to where it is today. And it sounds like by putting those systems in place and, being willing to look at new technology, she really took her business to the next level. 22% in 4 months, increase in sales, that's hard to argue with. As always, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications below to make sure you never miss a video. Thank you very much for watching, guys. You take care.